Every day, aftermarket shops change their prices. Do you know how yours compare? IntelliCheck tracks millions of real service prices so you can raise ELR, build trust, and win your market. IntelliCheck. Outsmart the competition.
Were you hoping that posting on social media would fill your service bays, bring you lots of leads, spread out traffic in the shop, work like magic? Here's a controversial fact. Social media isn't just for generating leads. It's for brand building. Brand building takes time and consistency and lots of work. But the good news is it's work that you don't have to do. At Fixed Ops Marketing, we take care of all your social media needs. We write, design, build, and post on your company page on your behalf, regularly and consistently, growing your brand and your audience. And we always stay on brand. Grow your brand, be consistent, and do it smart. Visit fixedopsmarketing.com/solutions, and we'll show you how easy and effective it is.
Right on.
All right. Look at that. It's like a real show.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe because it is.
Maybe because it is.
It is
All
a real
right.
show.
Welcome, everybody. For anybody who didn't see the post, it's an open discussion tonight, but we are talking about culture and culture as it relates to all year round, but we're coming into the end of the year, right? We just crossed into December. I wanted to do a 12 days of Christmas kind of theme, but there's only 4 Tuesdays. And when I laid it out with 3 topics for each of those to get us to 12, it was too much to do in each show. So we're just going to cover some of them. Hold on, we got the waiting room. And so first, for anybody who wants to look at it at some point, this is the person who I'm talking about today, and it is shows their values in their about section. But so I've got my stuff here, and we're talking about Ben Horowitz, and he talks about culture like a wartime CEO, not like watching a TED talk on culture. His stance is basically people love discussing culture, but almost no one is willing to enforce it. Ben is the founder and investor, best known for building companies in chaos, leading through wartime conditions, and calling out the nonsense people pretend is culture. He co-founded Opsware, sold it for $1.6 billion, then co-founded the venture firm Andreessen Horowitz, also known as A16Z. He's written 2 of the most brutally honest leadership books, The Hard Things About Hard Things, and What You Do Is Who You Are. Some of his core ideas. Culture is the behavior your team actually tolerates, not the values you print somewhere. Culture is what gets people promoted, not what gets said in meetings. Culture is the default operating system, not the mission statement. Culture is what people do when you're not watching. He is the counterpunch to the we're a family stuff. Ben Horowitz, everyone talks about culture. Almost no one defines it, and even fewer do anything about it. And where it relates to us, the culture that you allow in December is the performance you're stuck with in January. Departments will hit the new year with all the habits that were never corrected. So his message is simple. Culture is not what you say. It's what you tolerate. Mr. Wessner has said this a few times about your kids will do what you do and not what you say. It's the behaviors you enforce, the standards you protect, and the identity your team lives when no one's watching. So just a little background on Ben, so we know who we're talking about. He was an early investor in Facebook, early investor in Airbnb, Slack, GitHub, Lyft, Coinbase, Instagram, Okta, which is a security platform, and Stripe. So I'm sure you've heard of at least a couple of those. Um, and I made up a culture sheet that I can email out to anybody who wants it that has some of his things on there, some quotes from him about culture. But just I, I like what he says about it because he doesn't go all fluffy with stuff. Um, the most leaders talk about culture, almost nobody defines it, and fewer enforces it. Is the stuff that feels like what happens in a lot of dealerships, right? They talk about valuing transparency at the same time telling advisors don't write everything or quote down in an email because they might hold us to that number, right? The opposite of what you're telling your team. Um, so coming into the new year, your team is going to do anything that you let them get away with. One of his quotes, I don't know if I put it on here, um, but basically was that your culture is not in it's not what you've the phrases you've got written in the wall. It's on whatever you allow. That becomes your culture, right? So that lowest denominator there is where your culture is gonna wind up. Not no matter how many times you tell them what it is, they're going to follow the leader and follow everybody else. And if it's allowed, if you tell them that you value teamwork, but you always allow that number one advisor, number one tech to do what they want, take the days off they want, um, give the discounts they want. That's what they're going to follow. That's the way that it's going to be. No matter how many times you tell them that it's unacceptable, because you accepted it from somebody else. So that lowest denominator now becomes the bar for culture, not the other way around. So that's my opening volley, and now I open it up to all of you, and I want to unpin myself here.
That's deep.
I'd like to start by saying I think this is an excellent topic for conversation. And it's a really great way to prepare ourselves for January in 2026 as we're winding down and reflecting on what was good, what wasn't good, what we don't want to move into the next year.
Mm.
Tolerating, I guess, is a good word. And I'm looking forward to learning from all the rest of you because even though I'm in service BDC and not a tech or a service advisor or any of that, I'm more the worker bee that handling the phone calls and closing the appointments. But its culture is dealership wide, and we're also closely knit in fixed ops, and every single solitary role has to be held to the same expectations, I think, and have to be held accountable and all that those other things because that's how rifts, I believe, in my opinion, begin amongst the varying roles too, because one department gets away with things and how come what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. So I'm looking forward to your input because somebody really special to me said to me, and he's a very successful person in our industry, and he said, he says, he realizes my passion. Everybody does. I wear it on my sleeve. But often I run with more passion than purpose. And I'm always the one that wants to help everybody have a job and everything else. But the fact remains, we sell appointments. We're not order takers. We're not receptionists. We're not warranty clerks covering the phones. We sell appointments. We drive traffic. So what you guys hold for the rest of your department too, you should hold your BDC to. So that's just what I wanted to put in at the start of it all. Let's go.
It starts from the top though, right? So from a DP or a CEO or whatever down, Once you get into departmental leadership, if you're not going to allow those departmental leaders to lead, and when they put something in place, as long as it's agreed upon from the top down, they can't go against that either. Because how many times are you trying to hold somebody accountable, or you want to hold the line and be consistent with what you're doing, and then somebody goes around you and all of a sudden now you have no teeth. So I think it has to start at the top.
All right, we all know about warranty nightmares. Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. If your warranty process still involves sticky notes, tribal knowledge, and late night claims rejections, you're leaving money on the table. Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated brings clarity, compliance, and cash flow to your warranty game. They speak fluent OEM, and they've got your back. Hey, I want to encourage you to take a visit over to our partner, Target Automotive, at target.com. That is great until you're drowning in it. Target turns that chaos into clarity with dashboards that actually make sense. Fixed Ops leaders finally get what they need: real-time, drill-down insights without the spreadsheet migraines. It's not just business intelligence; it's Target. Yeah, it has to. It may not always have to start at the top, but it definitely has to be enforced all the way up through
At the top, yeah,
right?
yeah. So bad choice of words.
I think
No, not bad choice of words, because that's typically the way it's going to go, right? Is that somebody at the top is going to be the person defining it. But the quote that he said that relates to what you just said is, culture is what you tolerate. If someone breaks the standard and nothing happens, that becomes the real standard, right? So sometimes you have, just like you have people in stores that are leaders that don't hold the title, right? And they may be the one who are really setting the standard for the culture. But it still has to be, if somebody breaks that standard, there has to be, somebody has to be accountable for that, and it has to be punished is the bad word, but something has to happen, right? There has to be an effect of breaking that standard.
And I don't think you realize the impact of when you said the words "follow the leader." That's so much reality, whether we see it directly or not, because I catch conversations from really, I don't want to call them snitches, but just people that are conscientious enough that they see things happen in side conversations or whatever, and they're concerned because when you work so hard to hold up your culture, and then you have, I don't want to call them a bad seed. It's human nature. If you can get away with something, you will, a lot of times. And if you let it go and you don't get called on it the first time, you'll do it again and you'll do it again. And then that's going to drag down the people that were acting true to your culture and everything. So the struggle is real with the follow the leader stuff.
Well, I think the challenges these days of being a leader is because culture has become so important in the execution of business. The successful execution of business depends on a very good cultural environment for people to succeed. And you can see that when you go to different stores. But it's become more important than it was before. Before, you could get away with a command and control deal. That's very difficult to do today. And I think that's what makes leadership so challenging. And we talk about it all the time, the different challenges. But I think that escalation of difficulty on leaders is significant. And a lot of it is driven by the need to have an effective culture, not just to stand there and tell everybody what to do. So, I think it's interesting.
Right. Think about it this way. The research proves it out. Thousands of researches, thousands of studies. Healthy cultures correlate with stronger business success outcomes. Higher engagement, lower turnover, better revenue, better client engagement. And I just read a survey as I was taking a course on culture. I just finished a 108-hour course. One of the things that they talked about specifically was 70% of leaders in the business world, executives, not talking specifically about automotive, but those leaders said culture is more important than strategy. Think about that just for a second. These are business leaders saying that culture is far more important than strategy. And it's true in today's world, especially because everything ties together as an organization built around a stronger culture, a healthier environment. And to everyone's point, while it may be the leader that's creating or keeping the ship afloat, it's really everyone on the team that has to take care of the boat. They have to do their part to keep that boat on the water. It's an interconnected process, system, people. They're all interconnected in a good culture. We talk about all the time. I go to dealerships and I see on the wall culture statements or mission statements. And I got to be honest with you, when I ask, most people don't even know what they are.
Nope.
Because it's a statement decided by, to Kyle's point, by someone in leadership, designed in the environment and put on a wall, but it's never talked about. It's never encouraged. In fact, to Wendy's point, it's not even discouraged. So as long as you're generating the revenue, then the culture says it's okay if you don't align with our values. But good cultures have three things in common. When I teach this on my own, we teach this in a boat metaphor. So I'll give you guys a framework. One is the value-based behaviors. So these are the pillars. These are the planks and the beams of the boat, if you will. They define how you're going to show up. Dave, I'm passionate about culture, so thanks for giving me just a couple minutes. When behaviors align with the values of the company, that culture, that craft, that ship, if we will, it's going to have a stronger, resilient physical statue. So it's going to be able to ride out the storms. It's going to be able to change course as the winds change, as the current changes. Today, the environment isn't as agile because those winds are stronger, the waves are bigger, the currents are stronger. And if you aren't in a strong value-based culture, it's hard to adjust your ship. It's hard to steer and redirect. And then the connection to that, if you will, the second circle is process. So how you hire, how you onboard, how you develop your people, how you make decisions as a collective unit. When processes reflect your values, everyone on the ship moves as one, right? Everyone is working as a partner on the boat to take care of how well that ship is operating. And then you have the last circle, which is practice. The rhythms that you do daily, the meetings, the communications, how you follow through with things. I think it's the small routines that strengthen. So think of it this way. You get on a ship or a boat. I think Kyle said he's going on a cruise, and getting on a cruise with flares that are outdated.
Oh, God.
Or better yet, getting on that cruise without any life vests. We think about that every day. If you're on a ship, these are important natures. The line to tie the ship up, how well the rudder works, how well the engine works. Those things are like our cognitive thoughts, right? They just happen by action because we don't have to think about them. But the things you have to think about, i.e. the nature of the wellness of that ship, is what builds a good culture.
Quick break in the action. Let's talk parts. Yeah, that corner of the dealership most people don't look at until there's a fire. Parts Edge helps you clean up that mess. Smarter inventory, better margins, and no more guessing games. It's like giving your parts manager a crystal ball, except this one actually works. Spiffy. You can manage your mobile appointments, optimize your service routes, track inventory, and process payments, all with Spiffy, and you can learn more at spiffy.com. You ever wish you could inspect every car like a tech with X-ray vision? UVI is like an MRI for your car. UVI doesn't miss a thing. Scans the tires, the underbody, body panels, and wheels for scuffs in seconds, giving your team instant, actionable intel without slowing down the lane. That's not the future. That's UVI, and it's live in stores today.
And that's where I think, personally, that's where I think the biggest structure that is lapsed in culture environments or environments that lack culture is no one's clear about what the values are. No one's clear about what the processes are. No one's clear about what the purpose is or how we practice those things in real life. I'll stop talking. I could talk for an hour. I love this stuff.
You know,
Love you to
that's
talk for an
really
hour, Coach.
that's really good, Coach. And it aligns very carefully with what I teach too when I build new teams, is that you have to have a strong foundation. Like I use kind of like the three pigs, but not really. I just say you have to build your foundation. Because whatever I build, you want to build it that it's sustainable and scalable, and that the very biggest part, Joe, is the foundation. Like you can't build the foundation for your house on a bed of soda crackers, right? It has to be a
Right.
solid foundation that begins with culture. And the biggest piece for me of the culture is mindset. Like that's the very first part of a training on in a dealership or a remote team, is that, and I started with tell me about your why and tell me about you and where do you see yourself, the typical things that we ask, but in a group setting. So the group can, the whole first day onboarding is all about culture and getting to know one another and what our respective whys are. And the fact that it's so important that we look at all the different mindsets, not only our own, but the mindsets of the people we deal with. The where BDC drives traffic and our mindset is driving traffic, and sales wants to help the warm body that's in the showroom and sell them a car. And it's understanding all the different perspectives, and that's the way, in my opinion, you build that strong foundation. But then the walls have to be equal, and those walls consist of your people, your process, accountability, all of that stuff, that all have to grow consistently and be sustainable, and people hold everyone accountable, so that as you're building up, you've got the strong foundation and everything is symmetrical, I guess is a good word, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I completely, that's wonderful. I agree with that. Culture is so very important.
Think about that first storm you're up against, and you're on my example of the boat, right? When you have the right person on the boat and you know that they're in alignment with everyone else to care for the boat, they won't sacrifice values to keep the boat alive, right? To keep the boat on its storm. The people that will sacrifice those values are the ones that will throw someone overboard to keep themselves safe. They'll sacrifice or do a shortcut, if you will, just to make themselves look better. When in reality, it's the structure, it's the organism that matters more than anything in a culture. And everyone that comes to work should be a part of that organism, and the organism should always come first. However, when you're not clear about that organism and that value within that culture, then it's easy for someone to do something that is, let's just call it a little edgy, for themselves, to benefit themselves rather than the organism. And that's what culture is all about, is the organism living together, being balanced by each element of its purpose.
Yeah, I found when you start something new, like a new company forms, and you've got all this energy and all this excitement, and everybody's willing to help each other because, we're all pulling together, that creates a culture. But the challenge then is to maintain it when you're a going concern. Because when you're a going concern, it creates a whole different set of stresses that come into play. And that energy that you had at the beginning, because everything was new, you have to find a way to replicate that or to continue that. And that's the culture aspect of it. And that's where a degree of self-discipline from the leaders is necessary. That's where consistency is necessary. And that's where you need to find a way to maintain that energy, even when you're tired.
I think for 20 plus years, I learned live culture with people that I was going to be with every day. And now I think this might be more of a question than anything, but in this new role where I'm home or I'm on the road and I have people that are my responsibility on the road or at home, and trying to figure out how to ensure the same culture that I did in the dealership, right? So that family first mentality and how we go about things with consistency, making sure that my mission is the same, consistent. I guess the question is more along the lines of, how do I hold myself accountable in this spot where I have this freedom to not have a crew schedule, if you will, and then expect my people to do the same? And you don't know, right? So you don't know where, in this case, Tanner, I don't know where he is. I talk to him a few times a day, but I depend on him doing what he's supposed to do. And I guess there's checks and balances that come into play, but it's completely new to me. My staff was always with me. We were in the building together. We did it together. We I could hold somebody accountable right there on the spot because I see it as it happens. Now I might not see it. So I guess you guys that have been on the road and done these roles, I know Woes, you had a bunch of people under you that were all over the country, right? So I want to make sure that I continue to do what I did in store, and actually elevate it. So any advice would be
Well,
appreciated.
my advice is be who you are. Don't try and be somebody you're not, first of all. And second of all, the same discipline that you applied when you were in the store, that still applies. It's just a lot of it is directed initially at yourself. Am I consistently communicating the same way? And then the level of communication that you have with people who you're not with every day is also important. And you will find different people have different levels of communication, and you kind of learn that over time. But a lot of it becomes when you have an opportunity to see them, having a one-on-one, making it real, getting to know them, getting to know who they are. That will serve you well over time, because you'll be able to understand better why they're reacting to certain pressures the way they are and why others are not reacting to it. It just takes a lot more, I think anyways, internalizing the discipline and looking at yourself and being able to say, am I consistently communicating the same message? Am I giving off the same leadership vibe? And do I truly understand who the people are that are working for me? Because it's even more important when you're not with them all the time to really understand their why. And that's, I think a lot of the skills you have and a lot of the way that you are just as a person will stand you in good stead. Just don't try and change that. Don't try and be something you're not. Don't read something out of a book and think, oh, great, that's going to be the new and improved Kyle. Okay. Hey, the Kyle that is way good enough. It's just a matter of the communication process is a little bit different when you're not face to face.
Right on.
Yeah. Well
Now,
said.
I mean, I want to touch on this because Kyle is my leader, and we've been working together for what, about almost a month now,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is just because of my leadership style and the way that I've led teams in the past, but having someone like yourself, Kyle, in that leadership role where you hold yourself to a certain standard, and I hold myself to one, but because, you know, the fact that you've put your trust in me, right? And the fact that you have your standard in that, it motivates me to maintain that standard. Now, I'm just that person as a whole. Like I've told Kyle this when we first started working together. I can't stand micromanaging. If you want me to get a job done, point me in a direction and cut me loose. I promise you I'll get it done. But that's one thing where I feel respected by your leadership, because the way that you do it is you call and you say, this morning, Tanner, I need you to hit this area, do this, and do this. And that's it. That's the conversation. And then you say, if you need me, I'm here. That that in of itself sets that cultural standard where you're going to attract guys, hopefully more like myself, that are that independent but respect the leadership style. And I've worked with a lot of people that have a lot of different leadership tendencies and styles and cultural characteristics, but like Mr. Steven was saying, don't let that go away, because you're going to attract what you put out.
Yeah.
And if you stay the way you are, hopefully we're going to attract more people that are independent. You don't have to babysit. I don't have to babysit, and kind of go down that path. So I wanted to touch on that no, I do appreciate your style of how you bring things. You've been super awesome with me and my family. You know, don't let that go anywhere, because then we'll have problems.
No, it never will. It
Yeah,
never will.
I think
I
that's
am like,
I think that's key. And the other thing you'll find, Kyle, over time is that the more you get to talk to people, the more they see what's real and what's fake. Okay. And I used to call it the bullshit meter. Okay. With enough experience, you have a very sensitive bullshit meter. And so when somebody starts acting out of character or saying things that are out of character, I mean, we used to have really hard ass managers at Ford that would beat the crap out of you on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden, there were one of these HR meetings and they were your best buddy and your best pal. And everybody's looking at each other going, who the hell is this guy? You know? So I think it's that consistency, and the best way to be consistent is to be who you are. I found that, a lot of the hidden agendas and all of that bullshit. I wasn't smart enough to remember all the lies, so I just went
no
with the
kidding,
truth.
right?
Yeah, I mean, just go with the truth. The truth is what the truth is. And look, if that truth changes, you should be able to communicate that as well. And if you do that consistently over time, then people will understand that, hey, it's not Kyle changing his mind. It's the truth of the situation has changed. And guess what? He's being just as upfront and straightforward with you about that as he was about the other thing. And I think that's important. I mean, I used to, every time I had an org meeting, we did them once a month. The first half hour of the org meeting, I spent explaining and talking about the company's why, and why they're doing what they're doing, why the strategy is what it is, and how impactful all of the people in the room were to that strategy. And it was funny because my admin said to me, she goes, wow, you talk to them like they're peers. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're all in the same boat. I mean, if it goes down, we're all going down. So I thought I just talk to them like they're somebody else that I know in the organization, and I don't worry about the rank, and I don't worry about the stripes on the sleeves and all that stuff. I never had time for that at Ford, but you'll see, people will notice, Kyle. People will notice. I think Tanner just said it, and I bet you there are other people, and depending on how they would say it, it would come out very, very similar to what he just said, because that's who you are.
Yeah, I'll
Thing-
add another perspective to that too. Your job as a leader is not the task itself, but it's creating the environment that the task has to be done in.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is that you have to model the behavior that you want to see in others, in meetings, in interactions, in the way you handle adversity.
Yeah.
And more important than anything is share your weaknesses, ask for help, be a little vulnerable rather than saying, I got to know it all. You have to Stephen's point, notice the bullshit meter and say, hey, I'm not really clear on this. What is the best path? You are the subject matter expert here. Let's talk about where, when, and how we might need to adjust our sail in accordance to the storm. So sharing some of that vulnerability is key in becoming a virtual leader, because that's really where you are. Just remember, you're not doing the task anymore, right? You're creating the environment for the team to do the task. That's culture. That's an environment that is cyclical.
And I think what to piggyback, I was going to say pile on what Joe said. To piggyback what Joe said,
We can pile on.
Is that he threw in the word virtual there, and realizing that a lot of your communication is through virtual methods like this. Communication is 10 times more important than it was in the dealership. You were standing there in front of your people communicating to them, and that human to human contact when you're communicating comes across different than when you're doing it on this Zoom call. Exact same words, same eye contact, it comes across different. So making sure that you communicate clearly, that you communicate often, but to your point, Tanner, not micromanagement often. And to Joe's point, being the curious one, right? Asking those questions, asking Tanner to clarify what he meant. Even if you have even an inkling of I'm not sure if he meant this or this, ask for clarification. In virtual teams, that's been the biggest thing that I've seen drive success is communication. Obviously, in anything you do is important, but in the virtual world, it is super important to make sure that you're communicating clearly and that you are that curious mind, because it's so easy to completely misunderstand what somebody said virtually and that you wouldn't have in person.
Can I ask?
And you'll teach, I mean, I guess the way I look at it is people, what did I say before? They don't care what you say until they know that you care. The way that they know that you care, usually in a business environment, is that you fade the heat when there's heat and you hand out the praise when there's praise. In other words, the wins get democratized and you fade the heat for the bad stuff. Okay. Because ultimately that result is a function of your leadership. And I used to have managers for the first time, they got a chance to hire their own teams. And then you'd sit in the HR meeting and they'd be complaining about somebody. And my favorite line was always, wow, that's terrible. I wonder who hired them. And then they give you that look and you go, thank you very much. You're sitting right here shooting yourself in the foot while you're complaining about the person that you hired and that you're supposed to lead. So like I said, democratize the wins, fade the heat. And a lot of times people will recognize that and you'd be surprised. I mean, I've always found people much more energized and much more willing to step up and do the difficult things if they know that you believe in them and they know that you got their back. Okay. If something happens, I don't have to worry. I don't have to, wonder if Kyle's going to come, fade the heat with me here or whether he's just going to bail on me, because you're consistent about that. And that also goes into creating that culture and that leadership skill. And that, again, it's even more important when you're remote because you don't have the ability to see them face to face all the time.
Yeah.
And I
Wendy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
So Wendy had something before
Yeah.
Steven started.
Oh, go ahead. If
Oh, sorry,
somebody else
Wendy.
wanted, okay, so really, Kyle, after being in the dealership for so many years myself too, and then when I went to work for Greg Goebel to set up the BDC portion of his client portfolio, it was the first remote job I ever had, and Harleen Doan had a hard time wrangling me because she had everybody else in Indiana at the Evanston office, and I'd never worked remotely. I knew nothing about. I was an empty nester by then already, so I didn't have to worry about children like many of you do. But I had no concept of time management working remotely when I could say, oh, I don't have a call till 3. I don't feel like working today. Let me see what's on Hallmark, right? So time management is so important. And I think it's really important to, and there's so many things that I learned from Harleen. And bless her heart for giving me as much grace as she did. But all the way down to even time logs, where if you do something for a client in the vendor space that it's more than 15 minutes, you log it because it's billable or whatever. And you start looking at that and actually how many billable hours or whatever on various projects you do. And work even your time management like a business, and another thing when I train leaders of the BDC, it's something as simple as a workbook where you have a 1 through 31 and you have an agenda from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you put in your things that you have to do every day. But then what you do is you move things around that you don't get to, and you add in the impromptu things that came up, whether it was a meeting or anything else. And that tells you exactly where your time went. And what you do is start with 1 day and duplicate it 31 days. But the idea is it helped me to become more disciplined and to look at what was draining my time that was not good for the business, where and December would be a good time to reflect on this as well. And then the other thing was, because if we don't know and if we feel a little bit off keel because we could be running our day better. And Kyle, you've been in the dealership. You can get up from your desk and go handle whatever comes your way. You can't do that in a remote or virtual world as a leader or otherwise, because you have a number of different people doing a number of different things, and you also have impromptu things. But the idea, I think, is structure your own time and feel organized and set in your approach that way. And that's going to help you to better realize.
I just
I
tried to
thought
move
maybe
my
that
screen.
was like
Sorry.
my Grammy's bell, land the
Yeah, get
plane,
off the
honey.
stage, lady.
Yeah,
That's good
time
look.
is up.
Nice mic drop, Wendy. Well done.
Sorry to break your flow, Wendy.
No, I'm just saying that when I feel more organized myself, and the other thing I do, Kyle, is I have a 10-minute meeting. I keep a recurring meeting open every morning. And when we're all going to work or whatever, I'll do one for first shift and one, even if it's 10 minutes just to say, hey, how you're doing, see their face, know they're okay. Is there anything I can help you with, whatever? And then that can dwindle down to Monday and Friday or whatever.
Yeah,
But whatever you did in the store, you can do that remotely too. And then accountability, whatever you decide in that first call, what you're going to do, like Tanner said, do this, and this. Then whether you have an interactive doc where you put it on an agenda and make it easier and have one part for you and one part for Tanner or whoever else you were leading. And it's not a brain numbing exercise in futility. It's really a constructive thing because you learn to work better as a team. And the magic is that Tanner might have ways that he organizes or manages his day that he's learned having been in that remote space that you haven't. And the best ideas come from within.
absolutely.
So that would be
Absolutely.
my ad.
Yeah, it's we have our meeting. Well, there's a time change between he and I as well, so that makes it even more fun. So I can't have a meeting as early as I'd like to because it's a little too early for him. So we have our morning meeting, and like we did this morning, I was in the car, he was home. We came up with a game plan, and this is how we're going to go attack the day. But you know, everything was regimented, right? So when you're in the dealership, yes, there's going to be chaos and things that come up and everything else, but the meat and potatoes of the day are the day. I know I'm going to get up at this time. I know I'm going to be at the store. I know I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to do that. And now I have like 4 different calendars that aren't syncing up, and I'm trying to figure out how to make that work so I don't miss this or that. And it's just it's a whole new world. And thank God for Foy, because I call him and I'm like, hey, I don't know if I'm doing this right or not, but does it sound good? But I will tell you that this was the best month end that I've had 20 plus years. I can tell you that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Best month end I've ever had. Um,
Good.
but I think as far as the culture is concerned, going back to, dealership life, and I think as a partner going into these dealerships and talking to these fix op directors, and whether it be a GM or a DP or whatever, making sure that Tanner and I are adhering to whatever their culture is while maintaining what our culture is with our company, and making sure that we're not disrupting what is either hopefully working in those stores, right? So I think it's a little different. I can't go in expecting what I know my store would look like, or if I went into Dave's store, I would know what it looks like because I know how Dave runs a store, right? We're going into these stores and we have no idea what the heck we're walking into. It could be a complete fire drill, but we got to go with it, right? It's not our place to change it or anything else. We can offer suggestions, but I think you're right. You go into all these different stores and they're different, and coach, a lot of the stuff I find as I'm going into the stores, a lot of the stuff that we talk about or you've talked about, and I have to go into my filing cabinet and be like, oh, okay, this is what coach is talking about. I can take this out of the file cabinet, remember what to do. And so the stuff that I've learned from all of you guys all of you guys and gals on FOM and We Are and everything else over this past year has really been helpful for me to make this transition. So thank you all for your consistency and great advice, and woes, really nice words. And it is appreciated as you guide us through that. And I'm glad Tanner gets to see it, because this is where we get to be real.
Hey,
Um,
hey, Kyle.
yeah.
I want to give you my 2 cents because we've met recently.
Yeah.
And one thing Stefan said that I always go by, and when I've hired people and trained people, is people don't care what you know until you show how much you care. And you do a really good job of developing that relationship. It's always all about relationships. If things are on a level playing field, apples to apples, people are going to buy from people that they like. And they also want to be with people that are knowledgeable and understand their business. And you have an innate knowledge of this business, and you bring value to the customer. And when you bring value to the customer, then you're a consultant and not a salesman. And those things are important. And it's all about discovery. I mean, if you take a football team, what do they do in the off season? They go and they look at film of every game of their opponents that played this last year, and they put a game plan together that week. And then that week they sit there and they watch film of games that they're playing right now, and they have a game plan of how they're going to go attack that. And when you're prepared and you understand your opponents, what their objections are, what they do and why they do it, I think you're going to kill it. I mean, you already have a good vernacular about you and a good way of connecting with people. You have a knowledge of the industry. Now it's going to and conveying your business to their business and making the pieces fit.
Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, well said.
All right, Dave, change the subject. Somehow I've made this all about me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I
Back to
wanted
you,
to.
Joe.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Tanner. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, so I mean, I wanted to touch on something Steven said just a little while ago, and I'm in the millennial generation, for all the bad things that come along with that. But and I'm going to say this because I'm a millennial. My generation's soft, right? They're more about their emotions and their feelings and things like that. And the older generation that's starting to get out of the workforce really responded well to this is the way things work. This is the way we do it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Deal with it or leave, right? And that doesn't work with my generation. Now it works with the small select few like myself because that's how I was raised. But you're going to have like so many people that are in my generation, and I don't know what's next. What's next on? Is it Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever the younger ones, right? Even
Okay.
more so, like the loyalty that it's just not in today's workforce like it used to be. We have a whole generation of people, I feel like, and when I was leading teams in my previous career, I would have guys that the moment you corrected them, and if you didn't do it just right, they were gone because they got their feelings hurt or whatever. And so I think that's another hurdle on top of the culture side of just trying to make sure that, and the reason I'm bringing up Steven's thing is that yes, you get on to these guys when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, but when they're being rock stars, not only do you see it and put a note in your head, but you go say something. Because just in my experience, if when I go up to a guy and say, "Hey man, I saw that you were a rock star with that client, you handled that upset customer fantastic. Like I'm sure that was awesome, dude." Like, just give them a little bit of praise, their whole mood changes the whole day. They're a different person the whole day. And the more you do that, the more it's going to, if you have a cancer in your team, it's going to purge itself. When you start having all this positive, the positive reinforcement with the negative reinforcement, they're going to start, you won't have to do it as much because the team is going to start holding itself accountable. And then you don't have to sit there and babysit your team. They're going to babysit themselves, like what Mr. Joe was saying about the boat. Like you build that infrastructure, you're going to have that to a point where you don't have to do it as much. And I think that's something that I've worked with leaders in the past that really have a hard time grasping the fact that, that those generations are completely different because like my generation going forward is dramatically different than y'all.
This is the
Like
first
Kyle.
time in the history that there's 4 generations in the workforce at the same time. But what makes it more complex than ever, it's the first time in history that we have a connection to neurodivergency. And there are a lot of neurodivergent team members that people aren't trained for. They don't understand how to communicate. So, Tanner, you used a word that I hate, but I'll say it openly, and that's that your generation is soft. They're not. They are not soft. They're more connected than ever to purpose. They want to come to work with something that has meaning. It is not for them, today's environment. It is not enough to get a paycheck like it was in some of the boomer generation, which the boomer generation was, I got paid to do a job and I went home, and that's what I did. Gen X, like us, that are in the generation where we actually hold upwards of 45% of the leadership positions in the United States, it's not because we're more talented, but we're more connected to purpose. We're more connected to people. And here's what I'll say to that one last step. In this process, as you're building culture, there's one thing that I always teach, and hopefully this adds value to all of you. I taught it on the SDL meeting. Have one meaningful conversation with your team member or team members all the time. A meaningful conversation means I'm talking to you more about you. I'm talking more about what it means to you. I'm using those EQ skills to have a meaningful conversation. So, for example, a non-meaningful conversation is, Stephen, how was your day today? Stephen says, fine. I go, great, and walk away. That's not a meaningful conversation. What happens to most leaders is we're stuck in the task rather than connecting to the person. So if you want to build a great culture, it's easy if you have a meaningful conversation. One more point. Tanner said, recognize when that person has done something right. But you got to go one step further. You have to define what it was and tell the story about what they did right. Hey, I noticed how you dealt with Wendy in the service drive. She came in a little hot, and you were able to settle that conversation down, and Wendy left happy. Great job. What did you do so well that made Wendy leave with a smile? Now that meaningful conversation turned from praise into, wow, they saw that, and here's what I did. Now it's a meaningful conversation. So if there's one thing that I hope we add to this conversation about structure or culture, is you have to have that meaningful conversation.
And that example that you used is an example of somebody living their purpose. Okay. Because if they're in that job, one of their purposes is to satisfy customers, is to help people. And the fact that you, as the leader, noticed them and saw them fulfilling that purpose is huge. It's absolutely huge. And, you know, every generation, and there are 4 in the workforce, but every generation's a little bit different. But a lot of it is, you know, what series of things, what series of experiences did you go through? And generations have a tendency to live through certain time periods, like that time period between 15 and 25. Okay, that 10-year time period. Take a look at what happens to you as a person from 15 to 25. Okay, there's a lot of change that goes on. And it's sort of the group that goes through that together and has those same experiences and those same effects will have similar characteristics. This doesn't mean they're the same. And, you know, my daughter, every time I call her a millennial, drives her crazy because she doesn't want to be binned into a group. She goes, you can be whatever group you want, but I'm not in a group, you know? So, but I do think that that recognition and the follow through at the right time means a whole lot to people, a lot more than you might think. And that concept, it's funny because they value purpose and meaning of the work the way we used to value dollars. Okay. I mean, you know, if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to do it. Okay. But if you're going to pay me, shit, who do you want me to knock down? Okay. But if you can recognize the purpose and recognize the energy, and that's why I say, understand their why. Why are they in this? Why is this important to them? And sometimes they may not actually realize it until you vocalize it. Okay.
Yeah, think about a neurodivergent person who can't clearly communicate or articulate that. So if you're trying to have that conversation, to Stephen's point, in a crowded environment where their brain literally cannot process the question you're asking, then they can't communicate their response to that. So it's important the environment they hold in that conversation in. It's important to phrase that communication as a, you know, we call it, using the Socratic method of just asking a more curious question. Those things allow the individual then to become part of a bigger picture. They align with the purpose. But Kyle, for you, just not to get back on one point, I would just say is be clear about what your mission is, what your purpose is, and constantly communicate that to everyone on the team until it becomes the fabric of who they are. That's vital in a virtual culture. Is everyone I dealt with 100 different locations in 34 states, 5 different time zones. And I can tell you it's not easy. You just got to repeat yourself. You know how long it took, by the way, Chick-fil-A to learn the phrase, my pleasure? Anyone know? We talked about it.
I do, but I won't say it.
Anybody know? It took 7 years. 7 years to make that a part of their fabric. So think about the time and repetition that culture takes. So for example, we don't think about in the morning how we're going to tie our shoe. We put our shoe on, the cognitive brain just ties our shoe. We don't have to think about it because we have too many actions. We don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to think about using our hands. These are natural cognitive behaviors. A culture is not naturally cognitive. It's got to be constantly spoken about. It's got to be lived. It's got to be communicated, right? That's
Yeah.
vital in this process.
Love it. Well, guys, it is 9:03. What a phenomenal conversation, and per the usual, thank you for all your feedback and making this another great hour.
Right
Please
on.
don't forget on Thursday we are 2 o'clock on the Eastern Seaboard. This week we have Melissa hosting with Leslie Swan, the CEO of IntelliCheck.
Wow, that's going to be a good one. Cool.
It is, because they're going to be talking about building relationships, bridging the gap. So great show. If you have time on Thursday, we'd love to see it. We are again 2 o'clock Eastern, or where Russell and Tanner live, an hour back. Actually, Joe too, I think, right? So thank you all for another fantastic Tuesday night. Please stay tuned for another message from our sponsors.
And if nobody told you they loved you and appreciated you, I just did.
I just did.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Every
everybody.
time, baby.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
Joe.
Good night, everybody. Bye. What's going on?
He's got to pin it.
What's going on?
He's playing the sponsors, but he's got to pin it.
Oh, I'm not hearing anything.
That's what it did the first time too.
Every day, aftermarket shops change their prices. Do you know how yours compare? IntelliCheck tracks millions of real service prices so you can raise ELR, build trust, and win your market. IntelliCheck. Outsmart the competition.
Were you hoping that posting on social media would fill your service bays, bring you lots of leads, spread out traffic in the shop, work like magic? Here's a controversial fact. Social media isn't just for generating leads, it's for brand building. Brand building takes time and consistency and lots of work. But the good news is it's work that you don't have to do. At Fixed Ops Marketing, we take care of all your social media needs. We write, design, build, and post on your company page on your behalf, regularly and consistently, growing your brand and your audience. And we always stay on brand. Grow your
I think I'm going to
brand,
have to
be
reach out to Fixed
consistent,
Ops
and do
Marketing,
it
y'all.
smart.
I'm just
Visit
saying. I love it.
fixedopsmarketing.com/solutions, and we'll show you how easy and effective it is.
Nice.